that is damaging to America's future. Last weekend, as the Senate hurriedly marked up their version of the bill, including a provision that kills subsidies for solar and wind energy while boosting coal and oil, Musk posted to social media, "The latest Senate draft bill will destroy millions of jobs in America and cause immense strategic harm to our country. Utterly insane and destructive, it gives handouts to industries of the past while severely damaging industries of the future." And cue our bald Spanish friend, he's not wrong. Heartbreaking indeed. Musk even threatened to form a new political party and to unseat Republicans who vote for the bill against their own stated principles. Quote, "Every member of Congress who campaigned on reducing government spending and then immediately voted for the biggest debt increase in history should hang their head in shame, and they will lose their primary next year if it is the last thing I do on this earth." Now, we should be clear here. Musk is also mad because the bill does away with a big subsidy on electric car purchases, which, by the way, is good policy, but also his car company Tesla relies on. It's not like he's suddenly a good guy here. Remember, he was the Doge founder. He was running around cutting things like biomedical research, cancer research, and USAID, leading to deaths almost too many to count. That said, again, cue our meme dude, what he's saying about the irresponsibility of the Trump bill, especially about its totally backwards, self-defeating energy agenda, is completely correct. The worst person you know just made a great point. And Trump, for his part, is not happy with Musk's criticisms.
I don't know. I think we'll have to take a look. We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He's not going to get his mandate, and he better be careful because he might not get anything else. Too. You know what that means, right?
Also, just to complete the full circle here, Trump is right that Doge is a monster, also right that Musk relies on a lot of federal dollars, something that all of us were pointing out for months as Donald Trump was touting what a great job Elon was doing. I mean, here's the thing. The way I understand it is the Trump administration and the Trump presidency is so rife with so many bad ideas in so many directions that every day they're always turning some of the world's worst people into sensible-sounding critics by the sheer madness of their undertakings. This big, ugly bill is no exception. I mean, it really is just astoundingly terrible in every direction, gobsmacking. It doesn't just take the country backwards in terms of energy policy, although that might be the most crucial civilizational challenge we face. It enshrines trillions of massive tax cuts that primarily benefit rich people and corporations, also benefit people who inherit estates over $50 million, very important constituency. And that is financed only in part by devastating cuts to health care and food assistance for poor and working class Americans. Depending on the estimate you listen to and the iteration of the bill that you're looking at, we'll see in the final analysis, something between 12 or 17 million could lose health care, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Hospitals will be defunded. And even with those cuts, the bill adds more than $3 trillion to the deficit over the next decade, also according to CBO. The other thing you should know about this bill is that no one is buying it. This isn't one of those situations where they've pulled off some massive, successful hoodwinking. It is wildly unpopular. And then when people are pulled on its actual substantive provisions, right? Like, here's what the bill does, the giveaways to billionaires, the hits to programs for the poor, the sick, and the elderly, it pulls even worse. Right now, this truly toxic agenda, both in the politics and the merits, is being held together through the sheer force of an institutional Republican Party devoted to the plutocrats and Trump's ability to bully party members into submission. If you've been following the fight over the bill, you will find oddly sensible statements from far-right Republicans over the bill's fiscal irresponsibility, which it is. It will blow up the deficit, and that might actually have some really negative consequences given where we are with interest rates. You'll see people blasting it from the center over its draconian cuts to services. I mean, here's the thing. The bill is so bad that even the person who provided the crucial vote today, like the one singular vote that made this thing pass out of the Senate, can't defend it. She knows it's bad. Here's Alaska Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski.
Do I like this bill? No, because I tried to take care of Alaska's interests. But I know that in many parts of the country, there are Americans that are not going to be advantaged by this bill. I don't like that.
I mean, this is a sitting senator defending the bill by saying, do I like this bill? ? No. Today, Murkowski even told reporters off camera she doesn't actually want the version of the bill that she voted for to become law, and hopes the House undoes some of the damage in the bill that she and her fellow senators did. Democrats, understandably, pounced on that statement.
Listen to this quote from Senator Murkowski, who just caved and voted for this bill. And you got to love this. She said, quote, "My hope is that the House is going to look at this and recognize that we're not there yet," end quote. I mean, my question to her is, if you really believe that, then why the hell did you vote for this bill?
Republicans are still voting for this toxic agenda, this toxic MAGA Republican agenda, even when they know and will articulate openly it's bad for Americans. Josh Hawley wrote an op-ed that said it's bad to cut Medicaid, and then when he voted for the bill was like, we got to have a serious conversation about how bad it is to cut Medicaid. The only silver lining, and it's a real one, is that voters do seem to be paying attention. They are mad, and they are poised to force Republicans to answer for this vote, their votes on this one.
For my state's interests, I will continue to do that, and I will make no excuses for doing that. Do I like this bill? No, because I tried to take care of Alaska's interests. But I know that in many parts of the country, there are Americans that are not going to be advantaged by this bill. I don't like that. I don't.
Today was the day when Republican lawmakers went from passengers in the implementation of Donald Trump's agenda to co-drivers, because that massive domestic spending bill, the one that adds to the federal deficit, that makes steep cuts to Medicaid, that in many cases contradicts the primary interests of Republican voters all across this country, stumbled past its final major roadblock on its way to passage. It is no small thing. In fact, there's an argument to be made that the sheer number of people impacted by what the Senate unleashed today is quantifiably greater than anything else Trump has done in the last 7 months. For instance, we know some 72 million Americans rely on Medicaid for health care coverage. And we know more than 40 million Americans rely on SNAP for food assistance. Make no mistake, Trump's extrajudicial deportations, his use of the military against its own citizens, his purge of vital government systems are all surely incredibly important discussions worth every millisecond of our attention. They affect tens of millions. But what the Senate passed today, its tentacles stand to reach hundreds of millions, for better or for worse. Joining our coverage, Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Senator, what a day. Your reaction to this passage?
I am angry. I'm furious, because this big, blatant betrayal is going to impact, cause enduring pain and hardship for those millions of people whom you just cited. But I've seen them firsthand. I know that the child who breaks his arm on the playground, or the mom who feels a lump in her breast, or the senior who's in a nursing home, they're going to go without the care that they need. And it's cruel and stupid. Cruel because obviously they're going to suffer pain, and they're going to be potentially without care. But it's also stupid because postponing care makes it more costly when the illness becomes more serious or the disease becomes incurable. And so behind all of these numbers are real people going through real crises, the cutting of the SNAP program, food assistance, veterans benefits, Planned Parenthood, the kinds of cuts that we've seen across the board, all of it just to pay for tax cuts, trillions of dollars in tax cuts for people who don't need them, and balloon the deficit by trillions of dollars.
They were redlining this legislation almost as they were passing it. Do you think that there is stuff here that even folks who voted for it don't fully understand is in there?
Absolutely. And you're right to focus on that fact because literally at 4 a.m. this morning, we were receiving drafts of paper with red lines, notations in the margins, and that was the bill. And the parliamentarian was reviewing provisions up until the morning when we were supposed to begin votes. In fact, votes were postponed from 6 a.m. to noon because there had to be review of it by both the minority and majority staff. So there are undoubtedly provisions in this bill, like raising premiums, co-pays, other kinds of really disastrous effects. And it is the first time, I think this is really important to recognize, the first time in our history that we are rolling back care for millions of people.
We've talked a lot about the Medicaid piece of that, and I think we're going to continue to hear a lot about the Medicaid piece of this just because of the sheer number of people who are impacted by this. But to your point, there are other elements that we have not heard as much about. So, for example, what does this legislation do to veterans?
Veterans receive Medicaid.
Yep.
Often they're dependent on it. Veterans rely on rural hospitals. A lot of them are going to close. The reason why Lisa Murkowski of Alaska was so hesitant about this measure is because of its effect on rural hospitals where a lot of the veterans go. Alaska has a lot of veterans.
In my opinion, I think this bill is going to face a lot of issues, right? It's going to face a lot of legal challenges because it infringes on the rights of citizens and of the states to some degree. And it's ironic that, the Republicans being the quote-unquote states' rights party, there are provisions in this which I feel violate that. I have questions in the title about whether a judge will declare it illegal or whatnot, of course, because we don't know yet. But one provision, just for an example, the bill already had what a lot of conservative judges and experts were even calling unconstitutional or would enable unconstitutional action, was part of the stuff taken out by the parliamentarian. So thank goodness not all of it is remaining, although they could just pass that potentially in another piece of legislation. But take, for example, the AI provision. The AI provision preventing states from regulating AI in any capacity, even if they disagree with a new federal regulation or if AI company is doing something and they don't like it. Now, let's be clear. There is, to a certain degree, federal oversight on trade. Usually, and there are all sorts of exceptions, but usually when trade is happening between states or between countries, the federal government sort of takes precedent over the states. So you could have one coherent trade policy. So if there's something about interstate commerce, generally the states don't regulate that, the federal government does, right? Tariffs, for example. The states can't go and negotiate specific tariffs with, say, Canada or whatnot. That's got to be the federal government versus the Canadian federal government and not the provinces and states of each country. But AI, not everything to do with AI is going to necessarily be interstate commerce. What if certain companies are just in purely domestic, within the bounds of Texas, let's say, abusing AI to do something horrible? And the Texas state government or the California state government wants to put a regulation on the function of AI in their state, or it goes beyond them. This means, guys, that there's going to be all sorts of hurdles, and that's for a bill that's already unpopular.